Boy, do I miss Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State. If that guy was in charge right now, we would be in a much different environment globally than what we currently find ourselves in. Mike Pompeo, the former Kansas congressman who worked his way up, CIA director under Donald Trump, eventually became Secretary of State. Last night, I'm watching him on Fox News, and I want to try to get him back on this show. He's been on here a few times, joining us on KCMO. He's now a Fox News contributor, and he's on there last night, and his first comments from the former Secretary of State on what we need to be doing. This is not difficult. It's not hard to understand. It's not complex, and it's not partisan. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this is the approach that this administration is going to take. Here was Mike Pompeo last night.
This is grotesque. It is barbaric, and it requires winning. And Prime Minister Netanyahu gets that. And I am just hoping that this administration doesn't slow him down. These are going to be long weeks. There are going to be some pictures that come out of Gaza that are going to be tragic. But make no mistake about it, Prime Minister Netanyahu has the duty to defend his own people in the same way that the United States has that duty. We now have Americans held hostage. And Hamas, puppet of Iran, is threatening to kill them. They've already killed 11 Americans. They're threatening to kill Americans live on video and broadcast the audio as well. And President Biden hasn't told the Iranians, he hasn't told the world what America's response to that will be. I remember, Sean, so well, when the Iranians threatened to kill Americans on our watch, when they were launching artillery into the embassy, American embassy in Baghdad, Iraq, we made clear we would hold not the knuckleheads on the ground in Iraq, but we would hold the Iranian regime responsible. When we did that, we didn't create World War III, as they said we might. When we got out of the JCPOA, when we moved the embassy, they said we'd create World War III. No, what has created war here is American appeasement, American weakness. And if we don't stand with Israel, if we don't give them the tools that they need to prosecute this to the end, until Hamas is wiped out and the Iranian regime understands that the Israelis mean business and they have American support, then we will risk even more American lives.
There you go. That is Mike Pompeo, the former Kansas congressman and Secretary of State, last night on Fox News. And a few of his points there, I mean, he is so spot on when he says Hamas is saying that they will broadcast video of them slaughtering some of their hostages, which appears to include American citizens. And this administration is not saying what they're going to do about that. At least not publicly. Maybe they're saying something privately, but frankly, it's much stronger if you say it publicly. I would love to hear the public response from this administration. No more BS. Not going to stand for it. Not going to allow you to slaughter Americans on camera and just go along with it and just sit there and twiddle your thumbs. And, well, I got my briefing today. No. That is when, peace through strength can really show its face and can be incredibly valuable and incredibly important. And instead, we're getting nothing. We're 2 days of mostly crickets from the people in charge. Mike Pompeo said more in that minute and 19-second clip. There was more powerful commentary there that I've heard from any of the talking heads who work for the White House right now. That's the kind of stuff that I want to hear from my leaders. We are going to hold the Iranian regime responsible if Hamas does go forward with any more than what they've already done. I mean, frankly, we should hold Iran responsible regardless, but certainly if they start slaughtering people live on TV, their hostages, and broadcasting it to the world, man, you ain't seen nothing yet. That's exactly what we need to be doing right now. And Mike Pompeo gets it. Mike Pompeo understands it. The guy's been around this his entire life, obviously. Top of the class at West Point. We know his background here in this part of the world. And he was such an outstanding Secretary of State for so many reasons. And he's right to point out how many times when Mike Pompeo, as Secretary of State, would do something, they would say, oh, boy, these guys, oh, boy, they're going to start World War III. Oh, my goodness gracious, these guys, they're just asking for trouble. No, you know what? The worst actors on the planet feared this country and the former administration. They feared them. It was the definition of peace through strength. What we have now are people who have no cojones, who nobody fears, and there is no belief that the retaliation is something that they should be afraid of. We have had 11 Americans murdered thus far that we know of, more than 900 overall, and thousands of others, of course, are injured. And we find ourselves in a situation where we have to, in some ways, ask our president to stand up, to get to work on behalf of the American people and the free world, and start firing back, not literally, but figuratively, against some of the worst actors on planet Earth. The very definition of evil unfolded over the weekend in Israel. If you have not seen some of the videos, I suggest you do it just so you have the vision of evil burnt into your mind. I think that's important sometimes to do. When people talk about, political opponents and they use the word evil, they throw that word around way too loosely. There are people in politics in America who are incompetent. But evil, what you saw happen over the weekend, that's evil. That is watching evil unfold. And under guys like Mike Pompeo, this is the kind of stuff that everyone warned us was going to happen, but it never did. You know why? Because they understood what made the enemy tick. And they were scared to death for themselves. Right now, they do not fear America. They saw the debacle in Afghanistan with their own two eyes. They've seen how we've handled and butchered the Ukraine-Russia deal. They've seen all that. The respect for the United States on the global stage is not there right now. And now you see this, which is by far the worst disaster that we've seen. But it's certainly one of those situations where you look at it and you say to yourself, okay, well, can it get any worse? I don't think it can, but I guess we'll wait to find out. Botched Afghanistan withdrawal, $7 billion worth of military equipment left behind. The Ukraine-Russia war that has no end in sight. And now, of course, Iran back to Hamas. War against Israel. And when you look at this thing top to bottom, it is as ugly and as sinister and as evil as anything you will see since September 11th, 2001. 913-408-7710 as we approach 6:30 on KCMO. Next news update will be coming in 2 minutes. When we come back, the Kansas City Star can't help but embarrass itself once again on this very issue. We'll get to that next. Well, it looks like we've got the president's schedule today, by the way. Welcome in on a Tuesday morning. And Joe Biden will deliver remarks on the terrorist attacks in Israel at noon, high noon today, Central Time, 1 o'clock Eastern. Joe Biden will give those remarks. So here we go. 1, 2, 3 days after the attacks, the president will be addressing the world, not just the nation, but the world today at 1 o'clock Eastern, noon our time. So I guess better late than never, but still unbelievable. I mean, this should have been a Sunday night speech to the American people and, frankly, to the world. Instead, it's happening almost 48 hours after that. So Kansas City Star writes this piece in the wake of the tragedy in Israel over the weekend. The headline here, hundreds from KC's Jewish community rally after Hamas attack on Israel. And they, go on to write a fairly straight news story. Remember, this is news. This is not an editorial. They write here, and I'm just going to read a part of this to you. In the wake of a mass casualty surprise attack by Hamas that prompted Israel to declare war against the militant group Sunday, hundreds from Kansas City's Jewish community gathered in a show of solidarity Monday evening. Goes on to note here, about 600 Kansas Cityans attended the event as local leaders condemned the violence and called for locals to support Israel. They have various quotes in this article from people who were there last night and who were a part of this event, obviously prominent Jewish leaders in the Kansas City area. They then go on to talk about the death toll and everything else. Now, towards the end of the article in the Kansas City Star, they note the following. The event Monday also came as CNN reported one of those killed by Hamas over the weekend was born in Boone County. Her father, who was on the phone with her as she was killed, used to teach at the University of Missouri. So they bring in a local tie as well. And this is how they end the article. This is the Kansas City Star in a straight news piece. The Kansas City Star ends the article saying this. Meanwhile, Missouri Republicans in Washington have been quick to cast the ongoing crisis through a partisan lens. Shortly after news broke that Hamas had invaded Israel, both Senators Eric Schmitt and Josh Hawley quickly followed former President Trump in putting the blame on the Biden administration. Hawley and Schmitt have criticized a prisoner swap between Iran and the U.S. last month because Iran has long supported Hamas. The U.S. unfroze $6 billion of Iran's money it had in a South Korean bank for humanitarian aid. Hawley and Schmitt implied the money was used to attack Israel, though the White House has said the money has not yet been spent. On Sunday, Josh Hawley continued to criticize Biden. So they take the end of this piece and they use it as a way to criticize Republicans. Now, if you want to talk about what Missouri politicians are saying, I would think the most egregious thing that any Missouri politician has said came from Cori Bush. It would seem to me that Cori Bush would be the one that if you were going to criticize a Missouri politician in the wake of all this, it would be the St. Louis congressman who came out and essentially mourned the death of Palestinian terrorists and equates that to the brutalities and butcherings the Palestinians committed of the Jewish civilians. Here was the statement from Cori Bush, in case you missed it over the weekend. St. Louis Congresswoman, 1st District in Missouri. She put up on social media in her statement, I strongly condemn the targeting of civilians and I urge an immediate ceasefire and de-escalation to prevent further loss of life. Come on, Jews, don't defend yourself. You just had your worst day since the Holocaust. Who do you think you are? De-escalate! That's Cori Bush. Our immediate focus must be saving lives, but our ultimate focus must be on a just and lasting peace that ensures safety for everyone in the region. Violation of human rights, writes Cori Bush, do not justify more violations of human rights, and a military response will only exacerbate the suffering of Palestinians and Israelis alike. We must do our part to stop this violence and trauma by ending U.S. government support for the Israeli military. I am continuing to closely monitor the situation. That's Cori Bush. So if the Star really wanted to bring up politics at the end of their article, talking about last night's event that took place in Overland Park, you would think that the focus might be on Cori Bush, who made by far the most out-of-touch, inappropriate comments in the wake of this attack of anybody in the region. And it's not even close. But instead, what does the Kansas City Star do? They instead choose to criticize Josh Hawley and Eric Schmitt, because that's all they know. And on top of that, that's all they're interested in doing. They are not interested in reporting news. They are not interested in being news people. They are interested in giving you the news through their partisan lens and achieving whatever their ultimate partisan goal is. And that's not talking about what Cori Bush says. They don't want that to be out there as that anti-Semitism, unfortunately, and the anti-Israel sentiment becomes more prevalent on the Democratic side of the aisle. Ilhan Omar, AOC, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib. As
Presley.
Who?
Wasn't Presley.
Oh, Presley, yes. Don't forget her. I forget there's 5 members now of the squad. It used to be an easy 4. It was like the Beatles, but now I got to remember the 5th. Cori Bush is kind of a wannabe. But she's in the mix as well. Yes, Ayanna Presley in Massachusetts. So you got the whole rundown now, right? But they want to make sure that their messages are not being pushed through their media platforms. But, if they get offended by something Josh Hawley says or Eric Schmidt says, oh, my goodness, we are going to add that to our story. And by the way, what Eric Schmidt and Josh Hawley are pointing out is absolutely true, as we've talked about throughout most of the day yesterday. When you unfreeze $6 billion of Iran's money, Iran can then use other monies as they see fit to fund whatever terrorist organizations like Hamas that they want to fund. And that's exactly what ended up happening here, as has been reported for the better part of 36 hours now. And yeah, Josh Hawley also criticized Joe Biden after the White House held a barbecue for families of the people who staffed the executive residence over the weekend. Yeah, that's okay to criticize as well. It was not all hands on deck. There should have been an address to the American people on Sunday night by this president. There wasn't. There was nothing yesterday. He didn't do anything publicly after noon yesterday. Today, he's finally going to give a speech to the American people and the world at 12 o'clock Central Time. So we'll be following that. We'll be watching that. But it is truly unbelievable that that is the local approach by your supposed newspaper of record here in town. Frankly, it's embarrassing. The text line is 913-408-7710. Pete, what about you? Are you saying your lens isn't partisan? Well, I do a talk show. That's the difference. I do a talk show. Everything that comes out of my mouth, for the most part, is going to be what I believe and what I think and what my opinion is. And then, by the way, you can call in, you can text in, you can tweet us, you can do whatever with your opinion. And then we can have a conversation. That's what this is. It's a talk show. We're not a news reporting agency. I don't mask this as something that it's not. I'm very candid with you on what I do and what this show is. And when I'm having something that's a report versus an opinion, I share that with you. But I don't mask reporting, or I don't mask opinion as reporting and news. And that's what they continue to do. So that is not apples to apples. I know some of you like to say that every single time I make this point. But once again, you're wrong. Wrong. 6:44, welcome in on a Tuesday morning. Don't forget about Tirade Tuesday. That is coming up at 8:30 on KCMO. Top of the hour, Mark Morgan. He's the former ICE director. We're going to talk to him about the border and how this all ties into what took place in Israel over the weekend. He started his career, by the way, in Platte County. So he's a local guy, and it's always great to get him on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. I've not heard it yet, but I do want to react to it here in real time. 8:05. Hope your Tuesday morning's off to a good start. We are going to be getting your tirades coming up at 8:35 on KCMO, and we need some levity for this Tirade Tuesday. So give me some good stuff here coming up in a half hour. Tucker Carlson on his show last night. I have not heard this, but it has been sent to me by multiple people. So I'm going to have Mark play this on his end, and that is Tucker Carlson. I've just seen the description here. And it says Tucker Carlson blasts Nikki Haley, Lindsey Graham, and Dan Crenshaw for being warmongers with their responses to the Israel-Hamas war. All right. I've not heard it. It's about a 2-minute clip. I may have you stop this in the middle of it, Mark. So let's roll.
So there's a lot at stake in how we encourage Israel to respond to the horrifying Hamas attacks. Wisdom and long-term thinking are essential, but you will not be surprised to learn that is not what we are getting. Watch this person, for example, who happens to be the media's pick for President of the United States.
This is not just an attack on Israel. This is an attack on America because they hate us just as much. And what we have to understand is this is the reason that we have to unite around making sure our enemies do not hurt our friends. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends, just like we needed them on 9/11. That's why Ukraine needs us when Russia's doing this. That's why Israel needs us when Hamas and Iran are doing this. And I'll say this to Prime Minister Netanyahu, finish them. Finish them. Hamas did this. You know Iran's behind it. Finish them. They should have hell to pay for what they've just done.
This was an attack on America, she says, when in fact it was not.
Stop right there. Stop right there. 11 Americans are dead. Who knows how many are injured? And we know that Hamas has Americans as hostages right now as we speak, and they may slaughter them on live television. Like, I get it. Like, I understand Tucker's shtick here. He questions everything, as we all should, in the wake of the last few years. But this is kind of like what I would expect out of the Squad. If AOC was saying this and you would be outraged, then you should be outraged if Tucker Carlson is saying the same thing. All right? Don't. If you spent the last couple of days upset with the Squad, Cori Bush, AOC, Ilhan Omar, all these people who have sympathized with Hamas to some degree, or said, hey, whoa, pump the brakes there, Israel. What do you guys think? Whoa. Then you should feel the same way about Tucker and what he is saying right now. We got a dozen dead Americans. Who knows how many hostages? Who knows how many injured? We don't even have those numbers right now. Now, that doesn't mean that America needs to involve itself in a full-scale war, but to make that kind of commentary that he just made there is wholeheartedly just inaccurate. And if you think Hamas didn't do what it did, knowing full well that there are Americans littered across Israel, heck, Ben Shapiro, who of course does a show here on KCMO at 3 o'clock, he was in Israel until Friday. The guy flew home on Friday morning with his family from Israel. All right, continue there, Mark.
For that reason, we must, quote, finish Iran, a nation of nearly 90 million people. What are we watching here? This is not sober leadership. She's a child, and this is the tantrum of a child. Ignorant, cocksure, bloodthirsty. Yet no one in Washington scolded her for it. In fact, they aped her hysteria.
Wait, that's also not true. Once again, the Squad can't stand, and I don't agree with everything Nikki Haley just laid out there, but the Squad has been very critical of the commentary from people like Nikki Haley. The Squad has come out in full force against what Nikki Haley is saying. So when he claims that, no one in Washington is speaking out against, that kind of commentary, that's not true. The furthest left members of Congress are highly critical. Ilhan Omar is highly critical of what Nikki Haley is saying there. I think Tucker's a very bright guy, but I would just say if you're on the same side of an issue as Ilhan Omar, you might be doing it wrong. That might be the moment. I know you want to be anti-establishment everything, and I get it. And, in large part, I agree with that sentiment. But, if you're looking in a mirror and Ilhan Omar's on the other side, that one might be that just split second where you say to yourself, maybe I'm a little off base here.
Hello, neocon Lindsey Graham just spelling it out and calling for the bombing of Iran.
So I've been on the phone all day to the Mideast, and I've told our allies and people with connections to Iran, what I would do, I would tell Iran that if Hezbollah attacks Israel, we're going to come after you, the Iranians, and have a coordinated effort between the United States and Israel to put Iran out of the oil business by destroying their refineries. There are 4 major refineries in Iran. They're fixed targets. If Hezbollah attacks Israel, I would make Iran pay a heavy price.
What exactly would happen to the United States if we declared war on Iran and started blowing up their infrastructure? Lindsey Graham has no clue what would happen. He hasn't thought it through. He's almost 70 years old and he has no children. He doesn't care. But neither amazingly...
Stop. That is such... Listen, I'm not here to defend Lindsey Graham. I'm really not a Lindsey Graham fan at all. Frankly, Donald Trump's a bigger Lindsey Graham fan than I am. Trump and Lindsey Graham have this weird bromance going on. But that's a cheap shot that means nothing. Lindsey Graham, Tucker just says, is almost 70 and has no kids. He doesn't care. So let me get this straight. If we're going to play that game, right, and we're going to talk about whether or not you have children, means that you have any pulse on foreign policy? Huh? So let me get this. So whether or not you have kids has anything to do with whether or not you're correct on foreign policy. Just so I'm clear. He didn't criticize Lindsey Graham and say, here's what Lindsey got wrong, and here's why he's wrong, and here's the right way to do it. He just commented, Lindsey Graham is 70, has no kids, and therefore he doesn't care. Well, that's not really, you want to talk about being a child. That's how children debate. Children debate by making comments like that have nothing to do with the conversation at hand. And by the way, Lindsey Graham has been wrong about a lot of foreign policy. But it's not because he's got no kids. It's just because he's been wrong, right? Yes, he's been too neocon a lot of times. That's true. But it's just because he's been wrong, not because he doesn't have kids. Not having kids is not why he hasn't been wrong. Hey, Tucker's too smart for this. It's just really dumb commentary. Continue, please.
Most of his colleagues in Washington, they're as reckless as he is. Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw took to social media to call for what he described as a war to end all wars, as if there is such a thing. But of course, there isn't such a thing. Wars beget more war. The bigger the conflict, the uglier and longer lasting the consequences. See World War I for details.
Wars beget more war. So is Tucker suggesting that Israel just stand down, which is what Cori Bush basically has said, and AOC and Ilhan Omar? Is that the suggestion there? Because that's kind of what the squad has been saying for 3 days. War begets more woe. Just stop. Come on, let it go, man. No one's suggesting the U.S. gets involved in some large-scale war right now. But backing Israel in its response is incredibly critical right now, and that seems to be the approach that most people are taking. And then, by the way, deal with Iran after the fact. 913-408-7710. We'll get to you. Tirade Tuesday's coming up, bottom of the hour, 8:14 on a Tuesday morning on KCMO on the text line. Pete, you didn't let Tucker fit. I mean, that's the 2.5-minute clip. What do you want me to play the whole show? That's an entire 2.5-minute clip that has been sent to me on social media by multiple folks. So I'm reacting to it here. And, if you want to go back and forth on it, the phone lines are open for you here on a Tuesday morning. I mean, for a pretty smart guy, it's pretty dumb commentary, to be totally blunt with you here. Tucker Carlson, who has every right to criticize Lindsey Graham. I'm not here to be Lindsey Graham's fanboy. That is, Donald Trump's a big Lindsey Graham guy. For some reason, they're bros, it seems like, more often than not. I'm not really a big Lindsey Graham fan. He has been way too overzealous on many foreign policy issues. That being said, is this the time to do it, which is what Tucker did on his show last night? Let's roll it.
Here's fellow neocon Lindsey Graham just spelling it out and calling for the bombing of Iran.
So I've been on the phone all day to the Mideast, and I've told our allies and people with connections to Iran, what I would do, I would tell Iran that if Hezbollah attacks Israel, we're going to come after you, the Iranians, and have a coordinated effort between the United States and Israel to put Iran out of the oil business by destroying their refineries. There are 4 major refineries in Iran. They're fixed targets. If Hezbollah attacks Israel, I would make Iran pay a heavy price.
What exactly would happen to the United States if we declared war on Iran and started blowing up their infrastructure? Lindsey Graham has no clue what would happen. He hasn't thought it through. He's almost 70 years old and he has no children. He doesn't care.
That was Tucker on his show last night. Now, it's fair to say and have the conversation on how to handle Iran. I mean, the short-term deal is to let Israel take care of Hamas and then go from there. But to say Lindsey Graham's ideas stink because he's 70 and has no kids, and then say he's a child, well, no, what children do is they debate through the lens of things that are meaningless on the topic. Lindsey Graham might have bad ideas. He has had plenty of them. But is it because he's had bad ideas or because he's 70 and doesn't have kids? To me, it's the former, because, that's how adults actually debate things and converse on things. 913-408-7710. Alex in Lenexa. What's up, Alex?
I don't know. Hey, I completely agree to a certain point that it's a low blow. It's a below the waist shot at Lindsey Graham. But I get what Tucker's trying to say. It's the man has no legacy. The man has no children. Therefore, he does not. He's trying to say he's just running all willy-nilly without recourse for what will happen with future generations if you sit there and, bomb the hell out of Hamas and take care of them, in Iran. But I don't think.
Yeah, but on the flip side, Alex, on the flip side, you can say, well, I don't know about you, but I have children, and I can say on the flip side, as someone with kids, well, I'm worried about what it means if Iran continues to amass billions of dollars in funding to then give money to horrible terrorist organizations around the world. I mean, I can sit here and say, as somebody with kids, that's a big concern to me. But it's better to debate the issues and not do it through the prism of I have kids, you don't have kids, or whatever. Yeah. Therefore, I'm right and you're wrong. That's just dumb.
I agree. And I think he needs to come at it with a different way because, yes, he does have neocon views, and he does, believe in wanting to put some warfare in. So let's start pressing buttons and making things happen. And I don't think that he's not thinking of recourse. The man's been doing it for how long? Mm-hmm. And he's 70 years old. There's got to be some wisdom between those ears. But, you're right. Men make a gutty decision at a dangerous time, and you're right. It hasn't panned out for him a lot in the past. And as a new father myself, it is something that now with all the wars and the battles and everything, you just sit there and go, man, what's this world look like in 30, 40 years for this kid? What happens in that generational time? Is the moves we make today going to set the standard for how the world is then? And that's where Tucker needs to be coming from.
Yes.
I completely agree that he doesn't need to be taking shots below the waist on whether somebody chooses to have children or not and whether that makes them a better politician or a better person.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree that children can make us be and think better ways. But I think at the end of the day, does a man still want to reinforce his power of his station? What does he want to do?
All right, Alex, well said.
Make his choices?
Welcome to fatherhood, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Godspeed. Wes and Gladstone. Go ahead, Wes. You're on KCMO.
Yeah, Pete, I think one thing is as far as Nikki Haley goes, you really need to be looking at the video because you can see is a point about her acting like the kid was having a tantrum. Because if you think about it, that's kind of how she looks. But as far as
fine. All right, I know. I get it. Tucker doesn't like Nikki Haley. That's fine. Whatever. Yeah. She looks like a child. She's kind of screeching in the video. I see all that. And then he makes the point, which is what a 4-year-old makes, which is a point that has nothing to do with being on the right or wrong side of the debate.
Okay. Well, but as far as Lindsey Graham goes, so there's a U.S. senator. He's 70 years old. Why would you make a statement about let's go to a war with Iran? Think about that. And then what I think Tucker was saying was, well, what could be the reason? There's no logical reason. So it's got to be something way out of left field, man. My question to you would be, what were the motives for Lindsey Graham saying that?
The motives for Lindsey Graham is, yes, he is trigger happy, if you want to use that phrase. But he also, I believe, believes, and rightfully so, that Iran funded Hamas, and Iran may ultimately be the ones who could potentially start a World War III. That's what he believes. Now, I'm not here to defend Lindsey Graham. I'm just saying that would probably be his line of thinking.
Well, you're all over Tucker for the reason he came up with, but you can't give me one for Lindsey Graham to say that. I think what it is he's going to make the reason Lindsey Graham would have said let's attack Iran is either one, what Tucker said, or two, he's going to make a lot of money off the military industrial complex, and he doesn't give a rat's ass about this country.
I mean, that's fine to have that opinion, but there's no way to really back it up, right? Isn't it fair to say the more likely reasoning here, Wes, is that he is, yes, a neocon, and yes, he does think that war is okay? I mean, that might be, unfortunately for Lindsey Graham, the answer too many times, but I'm willing to say that versus simply saying, yeah, he's on the take, because I don't have any proof sitting here he's on the take. And if Tucker, and by the way, if Tucker has it, he should show it.
Pete, I like your show because we agree a lot, but sometimes we don't. And we'll just disagree on this one, brother.
That's fine. That's fine, Wes. It's all good.
Hey.
It's all good, man. It's all good. 913-408-7710. Coming up next, Tirade Tuesday. Give me something good. Give me some levity. Please help a brother out. This just breaking here. I have put this up on the social media pages. Gosh, I mean, these are not the kind of stories we want to be sharing with you ever. But I-24 News, global news broadcasting live from around the world, brings you the biggest stories from the U.S., Europe, and the Middle East. They have video now with a reporter on the ground in a community, Kibbutz Kfar Aza, a quarter mile from the Gaza border. And they've got a female reporter on the ground here in this clip. And the Israeli soldiers are discovering babies with heads cut off. So Hamas has beheaded babies by the dozens in some of these border towns between Gaza and Israel. These are subhuman animals. I mean, it's an insult to animals. They're monsters. They are the definition of evil. That's what these people are. And anybody telling you or trying to convince you that Israel needs to take it easy, Israel needs to lead a ceasefire against these savages, like Cori Bush in St. Louis is suggesting, and many others of that ilk, including, by the way, some on the way wacky far right. The footage is as disturbing as anything you're going to see. Once again, these are subhuman, evil, despicable human beings, and a lot of things I can't say on the air. But that's what you're dealing with here. That's who they are. And any kind of propaganda coming out saying that, well, they're just responding. There's one just big response by Hamas to Israel's warmongering ways in the Middle East. Israel has been on the defensive since its inception. We all know that. It's basic history. And the atrocities that we continue to find out about in these communities will live on for a very long time. But just understand what we're dealing with here and who these evil people are. And that's what they are. That's the nicest thing I can say. Mike Pompeo last night was on Fox News, the former Secretary of State. Of course, he was a Kansas congressman as well in a previous life. He was asked about some of the reaction from people like the Squad and some who are suggesting that, Israel's just got to stand down. They got to lead the way when it comes to a ceasefire and, no responding, nothing like that. Here's what Mike Pompeo, the former Kansas congressman and Secretary of State, had to say last night.
I have no capacity to comprehend how you could watch what has taken place there and have any idea that the right answer to that is to blame the victims of this tragedy. We see reminiscences of what happened in the Holocaust, right? We see women and children being dragged off to their death. And for a congressman not to call that out, to say, no, that's the problem, and somehow say that those victims are to blame for what's happened is fundamentally indecent. And I hope the good people that she represents vote her out immediately. We have to make sure that we all understand that what is happening here is going to go on for a while. This is going to be of duration. It is going to require a lot of strength and temerity, and it is going to demand the American people join together to protect the basic human dignity that America has stood for 250 plus years.
That's Mike Pompeo with a sobering, level-headed analysis. I mean, he's not screeching like a Lindsey Graham or a Nikki Haley, but that is a sober analysis that this is not ending tomorrow. It's not ending next week. And I say that as explosions continue to ring out right now in Gaza as the onslaught continues from Israel, as it well should. We finally, by the way, have a statement from Barack Obama. This came down yesterday afternoon, 72 hours after the attacks. So welcome back from the weekend off there, Barack. Sure you had a nice weekend in Martha's Vineyard. And he finally got his focus group tested message out, it seems like. Here's what he had to say. Barack Obama's statement on X: all Americans should be horrified and outraged by the brazen terrorist attacks on Israel and the slaughter of innocent civilians. We grieve for those who died, pray for the safe return of those who have been held hostage, and stand squarely alongside our ally Israel as it dismantles Hamas. As we support Israel's right to defend itself against terror, we must keep striving for a just and lasting peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike. That's as good as you're going to get from Barack Obama, but of course that last sentence, striving for peace. I mean, you know, this guy tried to do it for 8 years. Remember Obama? He went around the world and he basically apologized on behalf of America. And the thought process from him and Biden was like, you know, if we just like played nice, if we just like, you know, gave these really bad actors some humanitarian aid and, you know, left them alone, like they would just want to live in peace too. That was their opinion. That still is their opinion in large part. As one of you just noted here on the text line, you say, I guarantee you that Biden is going to ask Israel to, quote, show restraint, end quote. That would be incredibly, incredibly brazen of Joe Biden to do today. But it wouldn't shock me one bit. They somehow think that groups like Hamas and leadership like Iran are level-headed, decent people who care about those they're supposed to be serving. They're not. They're radical, extremist, subhuman terrorists who need to be eradicated from the face of the earth. That's what they are. And if some of these recent videos coming out from the border there along Gaza don't tell that to you, I don't know what will. 913-408-7710, the latest news in 2 minutes. Well, there was an event yesterday that took place in Overland Park. It was put on by the Temple, the oldest and largest synagogue in the Kansas City area. KCTV5 was there, and here's what that sounded like.
People from all over came out to show their support to Israel and its people. For one woman, this hits very close to home.
Everyone's asking, are you okay? None of us are okay.
Netta Meltzer was born in Israel and moved to Kansas City when she was a young girl.
All of my mom's side of my family is still in Israel.
Her family fighting for their lives as the horrific Hamas attack continues with no end in sight.
When the sirens go off, they're running to the shelters, and they have children, they have toddlers, they have babies that they're taking to the shelter.
Thankfully, all of her loved ones have been safe, but she's living in a constant state of fear as her family is in the war zone.
Reservists are being called up. My cousins are potentially going to be called up to serve. And you know they're safe for now, but we don't know what's going to happen.
She says right now the most important thing you can do is show your support. Hundreds gathered at the synagogue in Overland Park to do just that.
To me, this was to support not only the Jewish community here in Kansas City, but so many people who've been impacted by the attacks.
Mayor Quentin Lucas says he learned about the service Monday morning and knew he had to be there.
To hear the prayers, to see some of the tears, to see the hugs between perfect strangers, those are the sorts of things that tell me that this is really, really hitting a lot of people in their hearts, in their souls.
While the days ahead are dark for Meltzer and her family, she says she has hope, saying Israelis are strong.
I think a lot of people don't understand that Judaism is more than a religion. It's a people, it's a nation. That is our home. That's what they're fighting for.
In Overland Park, Grace Smith, KCTV 5 News.
All right, that's KCTV 5, of course, down there in Overland Park last night. Paul is in Kansas City. He was there as well. Good morning, Paul. Welcome in. How was it?
It was very moving. Yes, I was right in the back at the far left where the TV cameras there. And, very moving, great support. And I was moved, and it's a beautiful synagogue. And then I come back home, and I hear on the radio that University of Missouri Kansas City is going to have a pro-Hamas rally. And I'm thinking, that reminds me of the Night of the Garden in Madison Square Garden, 1939, where they had a pro-Nazi, anti-Jewish rally in Madison Square. This seems to be happening all across the country, and I'm just stunned by that. But the ceremony last night was moving. I'm going to go to the Jewish Cultural Festival on Sunday at the JCC to support that. And, I won't be deterred as a Jewish American, I will tell you that, Pete. I will not be deterred. We will move forward with this, and the Jewish people will survive, no matter what happens.
What was the pulse last night, Paul? I mean, was it more just support? Was there any commentary or discussion amongst the folks as to the best way forward, or was it more just a morning session?
I would say more of a morning session and support. We did some prayer. They did some prayers. They had a couple of speakers. But they didn't really go into courses of action. They just talked about resolve, how the Jewish people will stand firm. They thanked the United States. There was a Jewish embassy lady there, emissary, thanked the United States for the support. So that was basically, it was just time. It was a quick after the decompression, after the event type of ceremony is what I took from it.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Paul. I'm glad that you were there. And where did you see the UMKC thing? Where did you hear that?
I heard that on the radio. I can't remember where I heard that at, but that they were going to have a pro-Hamas Palestine. Hamas is the same thing.
Yeah.
Palestine. It's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I just heard that on the. No, I saw it on TV news. They did it right after the Overland Park Synagogue report. They went, and UMKC is going to have a pro-Hamas rally later on this week. So I think they wanted to be even brokers, if you want. If you can even say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Geez, I did not realize that. I'm trying to find the story. I'll see if I can. But that doesn't surprise me because, by the way, that's going to be happening at college campuses all across the U.S.
It is. And just remember 1939, the Night of the Garden. This is the same type of thing, anti-Semitism at its worst.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the story there, Paul. Appreciate you sharing that, my man.
Bye-bye.
I didn't know about UMKC, but Paul really did lead into my next story here. Student groups call for U.S. colleges to plan anti-Israel Day of Resistance, praising Hamas attacks. Students at colleges across the U.S. are being urged to join a Day of Resistance in support of Palestine on Thursday, with events reportedly planned in New York, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Arizona. Reporter Gabby Deutsch, Gabby Douche may be better, I don't know, said events were planned for New York University, University of Arizona, Penn State, University of Virginia, and University of Colorado in Boulder. It was unclear if other institutions could see these events as well. In a post on Instagram, the pro-Palestine organization said the Hamas attack on Israel caught the enemy completely by surprise. The post also read, "This is what it means to free Palestine, not just the slogans and rallies, but armed confrontation with the oppressors. As the Palestinian student movement, we have a responsibility to join the call for mass mobilization." So think about this. On Thursday, you are going to have pro-Hamas sympathizers on major college campuses around the country showing support for what just took place. And we just told you before the top of the hour, that in one town along the border of Gaza and Israel, there are dozens of slaughtered babies. You are going to have major American colleges hosting rallies in support of what just took place. Now, this is America. I am a free speech absolutist. So at my core, I sit here and I say, you technically can rally on behalf of whatever you want in this country. But remember, you think the FBI is going to do any digging in any of these folks who are showing support for what just took place? No, they're too busy trying to take down grandma from 2.5 years ago, who was 2 miles away from the Capitol. And then they're too busy going after, parents who are showing up at school board meetings asking for their kids not to be indoctrinated with sexual education. But you're going to have thousands of college students all over the country showing support for what just took place in Israel, or at least sympathizing, at the very least sympathizing with what just took place in Israel. And we're just supposed to sit here and twiddle our thumbs and say, free speech, that's America. And I get it, but there is a clear double standard on free speech. And by the way, these are the same people that one political party thinks that we should just eradicate all their student loan debts too, right? Same people who are like, you know what, eradicate the student loan debt. It's fine. People need a break. They're just trying to live the American dream and get a good job and not be in debt. Really? These are the people we're going to eliminate student debt for? Pound sand. Because I can't say what I want to say. And this is unfortunately getting worse at other institutions around the country, including very prominent institutions. Harvard is under attack for showing some support with this as well. 913-408-7710. We'll get to that story coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio. And you should download and listen to us on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So you got 31 groups at Harvard, 31, including the Ivy League institution's affiliate of Amnesty International, that has placed the blame on Israel for Hamas's brutal surprise attack that has killed now over 1,000 individuals. So this was a letter that was signed by 31 Harvard University student groups that blamed Israel as entirely responsible for Hamas's heinous attacks, which really just shows how low U.S. higher education continues to sink into far-left insanity. I mean, Mayor Lucas posted a pretty benign tweet over the weekend showing support for Israel, and he was hammered in his comments. We told you about that yesterday, and I reshared it on my Twitter page at Pete Mundo if you want to see it there. Quentin Lucas, benign statement, support for the people of Israel, and his comments are littered with far-left Hamas sympathizers. It is unbelievable. Even I didn't expect that. I figured there'd be a couple of knuckleheads, but it's like a 2-to-1 ratio of people knocking him to supporting him in his pretty basic statement. So are these the things happening, by the way, at our higher education institutions in this country? Apparently so. Because not only did Harvard have that letter that, by the way, was knocked by a lot of its prominent alumni, but you now have this nationwide event taking place on Thursday where students in colleges across the U.S. are being urged to join a day of resistance in support of Palestine. That's going to be taking place at University of Arizona, Penn State, UVA, NYU, University of Colorado in Boulder. There have been some of you who have suggested UMKC is going to have one of these. I can't confirm or deny that. I'll try to find that out today. But either way, I mean, that's what's happening at colleges across the country. And I get colleges lean left, but how is this possibly a left versus right thing? How? You have the visual of evil to its very core taking place on TVs, on computers, on phone screens you can pull up in 5 seconds anywhere in the world. And that's who they choose to sympathize with. This whole thing has been a massive tragedy. It has been an absolute shocker across the globe. But I admit, and maybe it's me being naive, I don't know, but I am stunned at how much outward support there is. Not privately, not people, grumbling but being embarrassed to be like, yeah, those Israelis had it coming. Those Jews had it coming. I am shocked at the anti-Semitism that is running rampant on major college campuses across this country, and infiltrated in large part through one of our major two political parties. I am absolutely stunned by it. 913-408-7710. That is the studio line and the text line here on KCMO Talk Radio. And thankfully, you do have some people pushing back on Harvard, not enough. But it's interesting how the celebrity world has also been relatively quiet. We'll get to that coming up on KCMO. Mike is in Olathe. What's up, Mike? Good morning.
Hey, Pete. How are you doing?
I'm well. What's going on?
Hey, okay, this has been going on for a long time. I mean, you look at Yasser Arafat, he got a Nobel Peace Prize, and he was a known terrorist, And if you look at it, the Jewish community, they got it figured out. They educate their people. They're very, well astute. I mean, they got it figured out, and they've always been under pressure. I mean, not pressure from the world community, but just getting terrorized. So what I can't figure out, or I've never been quite able to understand, is why in the world do a lot of the Jewish community put their money into the Democratic Party, which has supported this crap for years? I don't understand. You look at Hollywood. They say,
well, let me answer. I understand. I understand, and that's a question that's come up a lot. And here's what I would say, Mike. The phone's a little spotty, so I'm going to let you go, but I hope you'll listen off air. And I don't want to answer for the Jewish people. I don't. But you asked my opinion, and the show's got my name on it, so I'll give it to you. And I say this as somebody who, grew up in, I don't want to say a large Jewish area, but certainly had a lot of Jews in my community. And there are those Jews who identify and sympathize with Israel, and then there are those Jews who do not, is the best way to put it. They are Jewish, but they don't necessarily identify or stand with Israel necessarily. They're just folks, Americans who happen to be Jewish. And their beliefs in what the Democratic Party stands for, despite the fact that they are very weak on Israel for the most part, and that really picked up steam in the Obama years. Bill Clinton was pretty good when it came to supporting Israel, especially compared to some of his Democratic successors. But for many of them, their beliefs in what the Democratic Party stands for supersedes the fact that the Democratic Party over the last 15 years or so has been very weak when it comes to supporting Israel. It's really that simple. Based on, my experiences and people that I've spoken with. Now, I'm happy for somebody else to call in and express a different opinion on that. But it really comes down to many secular Jews identifying with the Democratic Party on so many issues that they give them a pass on Israel. Sad to say. Meantime, when you look at celebrities and influencers, they rarely miss the opportunity to jump on a political bandwagon, right? But unfortunately, they've been awfully quiet when it comes to the slaughter of over 1,000 Jews in Israel and kidnapping countless more. And, you've got now the broadcasting of people being slaughtered by these bloodthirsty Hamas terrorists. You had some people who did express horror. Amy Schumer, Madonna, Amari Stoudemire, not exactly A-listers, at least not in today's terms. But they did have something to say. But then there were folks like Kylie Jenner. So Kylie Jenner posted a meme on her Instagram over the weekend. Pro-Israel, nonprofit Instagram post, and it was pretty harmless, pretty mild. It was just a meme that said, "Now and always we stand with the people of Israel." That's it. Mild offering as far as a political take goes. Devoid of specific heartfelt sentiment, right? Basically a cut and paste job to check off the box that says, "I'm a good human." But it proved too hot. And it proved Kylie Jenner too naive. She was hammered online. People were commenting in Kylie Jenner's Instagram, "Don't get involved in politics. Palestine's been suffering for ages. Are you even human if you're with the Zionists?" said another person on social media. And instead of standing firm behind the basic tenet that terrorism and targeting innocent civilians is unequivocally wrong, what did Kylie Jenner do? Well, within an hour of posting it, she folded. And she deleted the post from her Instagram. Nothing to see here. Murder away, Hamas. I wouldn't want to get in the way of my bottom line as Kylie Jenner. How disturbing is that? That is Hollywood in a nutshell.